Hey everyone, this is Ben with Stringer Bridge Farm. In this video I want to talk a little bit about some of the troubles with grass-fed, grass-finished beef and what I think are the three most viable options for dealing with, I don't want to call them failures, but not full successes with grass-fed, grass-finished beef. So you can see I just turned the cows out into a new paddock. I got a little bit of rye and clover coming up in here. Got a little bit of hay for them, but they must not be too hungry because they're not annihilating the hay bale yet. So anyway, I'll get into what I think these options are, and you can leave your thoughts and comments below if you'd like. Remember in one of my earlier videos I talked about there's kind of three key things that you really had to get right to have any chance of being successful in producing a high quality grass-fed, grass-finished beef. And this steer right here is an example of some of the trouble. So if I look at him compared to the average steer I have at his age, so he's right at 2 years old actually right now, slightly over. So he's within 6 or 8 months that need to be butchered from an age standpoint. You know, most of my herd is in much better condition, even mama cows that still have calves on them. So with a steer like him, you know, I tend to think it's more along the lines of genetics that he just doesn't really cut it as far as you know, producing on the same forage that a lot of my other cattle are producing on. So if you look at him, he's not a bag of bones, but he's way leaner than any steer I like to butcher. Now I have butchered thinner steers and thinner cows, and my results actually haven't been that great for a couple of reasons. So I guess, you know, the stars really have to align. Everything has to go very well for you to truly finish, say, a high choice type animal on grass. But today I wanted to talk about some options you have when those things really don't line up. So for comparison, you saw that steer walk by. This steer right here is half his age, and this is the South Pole, and he's also thin, but he's young, so he's still growing. So when he hits 2.5, I expect he'll have a lot more muscle on him. But back to what I was saying, there are some viable options when you have these animals that just don't finish like you want. The obvious one, I guess they're all kind of obvious to me because I've been through it, but the first one I want to talk about, which is probably my least favorite option, is when they get old enough, you just butcher them and you sell them. Now, I've had pretty poor results with this. I find the beef doesn't taste as good as a well-finished animal. It tends to be tougher, has a little bit more gristle from tendons and ligaments and such, and then the yield is very low. So if you're selling an animal on hanging weight or hot carcass weight, I think your customers will be disappointed because you could easily lose an additional, I would say my yield is probably something like 20% lower on a lean animal versus a properly finished animal. So I see a lot of negatives, and just like with any business, you don't want to put any bad products out there. One or two bad experiences can go a long way to damaging your reputation. I believe that's a big problem with grass-fed beef because my customer base is still, the minority truly wants that 100% grass-finished beef. I still have a lot of customers that request grain-finished, and the ones that have really gotten turned on to grass-fed weren't really that way originally. Basically, I had to give them some grass-fed beef to try, some of our better stuff, and they've been happy with it. I'm walking over here to a steer that's about 6 months younger than that one I just showed you, but he's already got a much better finish on him. So when this one gets another year of age on him, he's going to be a high quality animal. And you could just see, look how deep he is and how filled out he is. He looks much nicer. So, you know, this steer, I have no doubts that he'll finish on the pure grass and be 100% grass-fed, grass-finished. So first option, like I said, you can just go ahead and butcher those animals, but I'd recommend keeping one for yourself like that before you try to sell anything like that, so you can experience it and see if it's in line with what you really want to be selling and putting out there. The second option, which is actually my absolute least favorite, because you never know what you're going to get, is you could take those animals to a livestock auction stockyard and dump them like that. But my experience with that has been highly variable and generally not very good, because usually if you're bringing one or two odd animals, they're going to be discounted pretty heavily, especially if you've got anything outside the norm. So if you've got anything that's would consider shorts, like the Dexters, probably even the South Poles. There's a few other smaller breeds that they're gonna mark them as shorts, and you'll get discounted. Or if you've got Hereford, those usually get discounted, especially if it's just one odd animal. So I don't like doing that, because to me, I brought animals that you'll get like $150 for a 400 or 500 or 700 pound animal, and you're just thinking, what in the world? I'd have just soon kept ground meat for myself. So, you know, stockyard's really my last option. The last point I want to talk about is probably my first choice, which is, you know, we're heavy into rotational grazing. We're big into trying to produce grass-fed, but I'm not 100% diehard. I believe you got to meet what your customers want, and you got to do what's practical and do what makes financial sense if you want to have any success at farming or ranching. So my first choice is actually, I'll go and buy a couple of tons of feed, and you got to be honest with your customer base and make sure they know you know, how those animals were raised. But my preferred choice is those animals that just can't quite perform on pure grass. Pretty much every single one I've done it with has performed exceptionally well with a little bit of grain input. So what I like to do is I'll take those animals and I'll put them on grain supplement while they stay on pasture, and they stay rotate, and I separate them from the herd. But I'll put them on grain. Usually they'll gain really well. Usually within 4 to 6 months, you've got a well-finished animal that is ready to go to butcher, and it's more than likely going to grade choice or high choice without any issues, and then you can get your premium money for your product. So and it's still a pasture-raised animal, so it's still a little bit different than what they're getting in the supermarket. You know, the fat will still have that yellow tint to it that kind of shows that it was raised on pasture and grass, but you just need to be open and honest about it was fed some grain to finish, and most people still appreciate that. So a lot of my customers still want a little bit of grain, so I've always got a few that I'm splitting off, and I'll grain feed. But to me, that's the best option, because it makes the most financial sense to me, and it satisfies what my customer base really wants. So, you know, end goal, get to all grass-fed, 100% all grass-fed, or as close to it as I can. But, you know, I'm going to remain practical in the sense that I'm not going to force something if it's not working. So as my customer base demands it, and as my herd is able to supply it, I will move more and more towards pure grass-fed. But until now, I'm probably going to stick with first option, put them on a little bit of grain and finish them off. Second option, you know, if you got an injury or something like that and an animal's not ready, you just butcher it for yourself. And then my absolute last option, if I really get in a bind, would be to go to a stockyard with those animals. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on you know, our operation here, where we do a lot of grass-fed, grass-finished. So if y'all got any questions, comments, anything, just leave a comment below. Thanks.